Welcome to the Tuning In podcast, where we talk alignment, intuition, and our internal guidance system. We cover woo-woo topics in an approachable and practical way. I'm your host, Dana Evans of Alignful.com. Happy Woo Woo Wednesday, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. So, this week, I am so excited to have the magical Janice Burch on the podcast. And we had, oh my gosh, we did keep it at an hour, so it is at an hour long episode, but we had the most fun conversation. So Janice, we share how we met on the episode, and when we met, we totally connected, and we were both like, oh my gosh, we need to spend more time talking to each other. So we did that, and then she shifted from being on Instagram and Facebook to not. And she actually made the decision that was, of course, guided by her intuition to move her business off of those platforms and to run it only through email. And in this episode, she shares the inspiration and the story behind that, and it's really interesting. And in fact, she shares so many stories of her doing what she calls following the breadcrumbs, which are literally not knowing what is next, but taking the next step based on her intuitive guidance. And this included when she quit her job at a well-respected tech company to become what she didn't know, a coach, to work with intuitive clients, and all the different titles that she's had along the way and how she sees that. She also talks about her perspective of desires and what that means and the difference between having a desire, right, and following it and judging the desire. I wrote so many quotes down because it was such an inspiring episode, but she said a lot of really profound, powerful things. But one that she said that I loved was, in order for my business to be well, I have to be well. And throughout the conversation, she threads in, how she is managing her own energy, right? How she's taking care of herself while taking care of her business. It's a beautiful episode. Janice is an intuitive coach, and she helps people get rid of the mindset blocks that are blocking the flow of abundance in their lives. She says, abundance for me and my clients isn't about achievement or just money. It's about authenticity, joy, and alignment with your purpose. She talks about success and how she sees that and how her clients see it and how she works with them. Oh my gosh, it was such a fun conversation. I don't want you to miss out on any of it. So go ahead and put on your headphones, hop in the car, start cleaning the house, whatever it is that you do when you have a longer podcast episode, and really enjoy it. And I say this a lot, but this is another episode where I really encourage you to listen from your heart, not just your mind. Really listen into the conversation. Listen with your inner voice, with your intuition, and see if it sparks anything within you. If you feel the tingles or the chills or warmth or sensation, or you hear words, just be really present to your own experience while experiencing this interview. Thank you so much, as always, for listening. And without further ado, here's this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. And as you heard in the intro, I am joined by my wonderful, wonderful, wonderful guest, Janice. Ooh. Yes, Janice, you get 3 wonderfuls. Janice Burch.
I love that.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's funny, we've been talking about doing this since, I don't know, was it the spring, Janice?
Yeah, well, whenever we first met, I feel like we were like, we have to connect again and do something together. I don't know what, but we have to do something.
It's true.
And I do have to give you credit. Dana, you were like, this is what we're going to do. So thank you.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad because it's one of those times where we met on a book club video call and we both were like,
Mhm.
we had that energetic attraction that what I call, Janice, I made this word up. I call it a cellular connection.
Ooh, love, love.
Yeah, and we just like felt that. And I was like, okay, we need to know each other. And she's like, yes, we do. And so then we kind of struck up Instagram conversations. And then we were talking about doing podcasts. And because you all will find her messaging, like everything Janice talks about, is just so beautiful as it flows with intuition and how she follows her own inner guidance and how she does that in her business and specifically with the clients that she works with. So, do you want to share, Janice? Just they've heard your bio, but do you want to share a little bit from your perspective? Like, how do you help people
Hmm.
and kind of how did you flow into this place where you are now, knowing that I think we're going to talk a little bit more about your journey as we continue on to where you are now.
Yeah, yeah.
But how did you kind of get into coaching and intuitive coaching in particular?
Ooh, great questions. And I love what you said about how did you flow into this place. Yeah, that sounds so beautiful. Well, my name is Janice Burch, as Dana said, and I'm an intuitive coach and strategist. So when people ask, like, what is that? So my favorite way to describe myself when people ask that is I'm Indiana Jones meets Oprah. So I know that's like, what? And what I say is, so I basically help solopreneurs and executive leaders unlock the power of this valuable hidden resource that they, either don't know that they have or are just not aware of how to actually like leverage it. And that is their intuition. So, right now, I feel like, especially in the business world, but I've also found this with corporate clients. I've worked with like government servants, everyone, like they're kind of like following this path that's been put out there by other people. And after a while, like the blueprints and the roadmaps and the frameworks and like all of those things um, aren't leading them to the kind of success that feels really joyful and meaningful and truthful to them. And so they're looking for like, how do I create the success I want and still feel like I'm aligned with my purpose and that, I'm actually making the kind of impact that I want to make because I'm, showing up as my highest self. So that's what I help solopreneurs and executive leaders do, show up as their highest self by uncovering the power they've always had and maybe don't know about or don't know how to access.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love what you said is after a while, they realize that all the blueprints and roadmaps aren't leading them to the kind of success that feels meaningful to them. Oh, I mean, can we talk
Can
about?
we talk about because that's so true. There's so many of the clients that I work with now, they have success. Like they're achievers. They've done like so many amazing and like just amazing things. But one thing that I realized is like no matter how much success you've, you know, been able to create, if it's not truly aligned, and if it's not like in agreement with your truth, you're still going to feel like something is missing. You're still going to feel like what's like something isn't right. Like there is more. There's more. And so that's why I tell people all the time, like follow that desire for more because it's trying to like bring out that truth. It's not like a bad thing. I think a lot of times we tend to judge ourselves and scold ourselves like, maybe I have this great salary, or I have this amazing job, or I have great family members and friends. Like, why on earth would I be unhappy right now? And it's not because you're a bad person or because something's wrong with you. That desire is, it's your intuition trying to lead you to your truth.
That is so beautiful. And will you share? Yeah, that's one thing that I hear you talking about a lot, which I just love, is you bring up this word desire. And
Hmm.
will you talk about that a little bit more in how you see that? I mean, I know at the base, not the base level, but like you just said, it's your intuition trying to lead you to your truth. But how do you see that show up when you're working with people, and how do you work with desire?
Yeah. So many times, like I'll speak with clients and they'll say, well, I want this, but I already have this and I know it, whatever. And, or like, I don't understand why. I always say like, your desires are noble because a lot of times, especially as women, we've been taught like we need to do what's necessary, like not what feels good, right? And so when we are like in that function state of mind where we're like doing, what needs to get done, we need to be productive, we need to, be reliable, we need to be whatever, it disconnects us from what we want and what our desires are. And I feel like our desires, again, are connected to our feelings. There are feelings that come up within us. And I feel like our feelings are a huge part of our internal guidance system, which is what I feel like our intuition is. And so when it comes to being able to create the kind of success you want, or being able to realize a vision that you have, the first part is that you absolutely have to acknowledge and validate what you desire and not like suppress it or judge it or condemn it in any way. And the way that I kind of like explain this too is manifestation is a word that we hear a lot. So people are like, oh, I manifested this. And or some people are like, well, what is manifestation actually? I like to break it down into two phases. So the first phase is getting clear on what your vision is. And I feel like that starts with desire. So the first phase is your desire actually turns into like a clear vision of what it is that this means. And then the second phase is actually turning your vision into reality. And so it's going to be impossible for you to manifest anything if you don't first like acknowledge that desire and like cultivate that.
Ooh, yes. Yeah, because I mean, the way you said that too is like we have desires, and interestingly, our default response to desire is, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that, or I shouldn't be selfish, or I should be happy with, and so we like demonize desires in a way.
Right. I call it too like shutting all over yourself. I know that's kind of inappropriate. Sorry.
I love it.
But it really kind of like snaps people out of that space. Like anytime you're saying the word should, you're in your head and it's a story. It's not the truth. And what you're trying to get to is the truth. So should is like an automatic indicator that this is a story that's in your head, not the truth of who you are and what you want.
Yes, 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 yes. That is stories. Oh my gosh. Well, I've been thinking a lot about stories lately.
Ooh, what?
Well, I've just been kind of getting into back, I would say back into this like more mind story work.
Mm-hmm.
And and because I was into it about 4 years ago, but as we evolve, right, our level of awareness evolves. And so coming back to this more mind specific work, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm into the like the intuition, inner voice, intuitive work, and now I'm layering on top of that more of the mind work, and I'm like, everything's a story. And so I catch myself during the day being like, oh, you know, even with this podcast, right? The microphone. And I was like, I can choose to let this be a problem. And if I do that, then I'll have to reschedule. And then if I reschedule, I'm going to tell a story about what Janice is going to think of me because I already had to reschedule. And then I'm flaky. And then I'm not a good business owner. And I
Yeah.
saw that. And I'm like, oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's so true. Like, and I think that's a really important point that you brought up. Like, So obviously I'm an intuitive coach, but like one of the pillars of my coaching work is mindset. And people are like, well, why is mindset a pillar if we're trying to get into our intuition? And I always say, like, our feelings are our informants. So they're communicating valuable information. That's part of our intuition, our internal guidance system. However, we have to process that information that's being communicated to us, or interpret it or translate it, however you want to say that, through our mindset. And so it's going to get clouded and misconstrued and used incorrectly sometimes, are used against us. I won't say incorrectly because, your mind will do what you tell it to do. And so that's like a really powerful ability, or a really powerful job, an important job. And so when it comes to connecting to your intuition and actually extracting value from the communication you receive from it, working on your mindset is so important, because you don't want to misconstrue or mishear what's being communicated to you.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, because that is where, especially if we're unaware, like having that
Mm-hmm.
intuitive piece, it's only as good as, yeah, it's like the filter, right?
Exactly what it is. Yeah, filter. Exactly. Yep.
So when you kind of started, because I know you've done a lot of work in corporate settings, how did you
Mm-hmm.
end up, more in this coaching and the intuitive side of business? Was that always something that you were drawn to, or was there some transformation that happened along the way that you're like, ooh, this is my work?
It was always something that I was drawn to, but it wasn't something that I was fully aware of and as intentional about. So so just to give you an example, like when I was in corporate, I had worked my way up to what I felt was my dream job. I had this amazing salary, great benefits, good coworkers. My work, I liked my work, but I didn't love my work. But I was really, really good at it. And I felt like I could just like do it with my eyes closed. Like I felt like this is like, it felt like a cushy, good job. Um, and then going back to desire, I started feeling like, this isn't enough for me. This isn't enough for me. I'm not going to be fulfilled. This doesn't feel meaningful to me. And then I started with the judgment and stories, right? Like, how many people would kill for this job? I thought about my grandmother who, like worked as a nurse for 30 years. And like my grandfather, again, worked 30 years before retiring. And they were very much of this mindset of like sticking with a good job when you had it, holding on to it. And I just thought, oh, what would your grandmother think if she knew you would quit this job because you just weren't happy, because you wanted to be happy, or because you weren't satisfied. And after a while, I just realized like you have to trust this feeling that's guiding you somewhere else, or leading you away from this. Like you have to trust enough to let go of what's good, to receive what's great. And that's what abundance is about, right? Like belief that there is more available to you. And so just even that act of quitting my job, I like literally wrote my resignation post, and because I was in a fully remote company, so you had to like publicly post when you resign, which was so scary. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really scary. So
I'm out, everyone.
and so of course, it's this really like impressive tech company. And so like everyone else, when they left, they're like, oh, I'm going to Apple, or I'm going to this place, or I'm going to Google, or like whatever. And I was like, so I'm quitting. I actually don't know what I'm going to do. I don't have another job lined up. I'm just going to try to like figure out what's next and trust that what's next is, what it is. I literally remember putting in the post, like, I just have to honor my truths. And that was the beginning of me, I guess, kind of like being a little bit more intentional about like, of course, I didn't necessarily articulate, oh, I'm, trusting my intuition and following that and honoring that. But I just remember thinking like, Janice, you have to trust trust this feeling inside.
Wow. So what a beautiful kind of catapult to take
Mm-hmm.
you into this work. And then did so follow trusting that and following that truth, following the desire.
Mm-hmm.
How long ago was that you actually quit?
That was just over a year ago. So, not even, it seems like literally another lifetime ago, but it was not. It was not far away at all. And I want to like tell everyone that me saying, like, telling this story and sharing this story, like, I am not on the bandwagon of like, quit your job with, take the, like, that's not me. I'm never going to tell you to do that. I did that because I had to like honor what my truth was. And if that's not your truth, then like that's not what your intuition is communicating, do not do that. um, but so it was very scary, obviously, because I had to make the decision to let go. But I said, I'm just going to like keep following that feeling. I don't know what that feeling thing is in there. I'm just going to keep following what it tells me to do. And so the first thing that I received from my intuition was like, actually, like, let go of everything that is distracting you right now. So I let go of the lease of my apartment. The lease was coming up, and instead of renewing that, I let go. I said, I don't know where I'm going to live. Listen, I like fully committed to this. I was like, I don't know where I'm going to live, but we'll see. So I let go of that. I like just decided, oh, like you like to write, like start doing the things that you've always wanted to do. And so I started a blog and I started posting weekly. Um, and then, I can't believe I forgot this, but another thing that happened, was just, I kind of smiled. I was like, this is the universe saying like, yes, Janice, you're in the right direction. Is as soon as I resigned from my job and they posted it, a friend of mine who was like, oh my God, your job is amazing. And like, I would love to work with you. She called me and she was like, your company just posted a position. I was like, yeah, because I just quit. And she had a feeling I was going to quit because, of course, everyone knows like when you hate your job, well, not hate it, but when you don't like your job, you tell everybody, like you're complaining for like a long time. So she was like, oh my gosh. She was like, you need to be my coach. I need you to be my career coach. So I got my very first client once I let go of my job.
Oh my
So,
God, I have so many chills.
right? I was like, okay. So you are going in the right direction. And so that's honestly what it was. I label it like following the breadcrumbs. Like I would just do what my intuition was guiding me to do, and then trusting that another breadcrumb was going to be there once I did what I would, once I honored that. And so that's what I did for such a long time. So I got started with career coaching, so helping people get like their dream jobs. And then that evolved into me doing coaching for solopreneurs, doing business coaching. And after like a lot of a different experimenting, again, following the breadcrumbs, following that desire, doing what felt good and what really seemed to like serve people, I realized, oh, I'm not just serving business owners and solopreneurs, I'm serving other leaders as well. So now it's like success coaching, still intuitive. But yeah, that's what I've been doing. And I loved that you used the word flow. Because first of all, my company is called Work Soul Flow. But then also like, that's exactly what it felt like. It felt like a just continuous flow because I was willing to let go of whatever was and to trust that what was coming next was more and more aligned to my truth.
Mm. And it sounds too, I just love this conversation because I feel like in so many ways we've been taught, and I certainly have experienced this, is like, we're like, okay, what do you do? Right. And
Mm-hmm.
then if we evolve what we do as you would think would be natural as we evolve who we are, that there's this fear or this idea that we're going to be judged for like changing what we're doing. It's like, well, last year you said
Mm-hmm.
you were a career coach and now you say you're a success coach and now you work with,
Exactly.
right? And so we have this like fear, we hold on to that identity instead of like what you're representing so beautifully is allowing your identity to evolve because you don't know from the mind what is next. But if you follow the knowing from within, that evolution will be really natural and beautiful.
Yes, exactly. And I think I love that you brought that up, Dana. I feel like who we identify as is one of the like hardest mindset blocks to release. Like, especially if you've identified as something for so long, it really can be hard to like think outside of that box or that wall or that limit that you've placed on yourself. But just as like a small example, someone saying I'm shy, like that's just who I am. Well, then it's going to be hard for you to talk about what you do. It's going to be hard for you to walk up to someone and introduce yourself. It's going to be difficult for you, and it's all because you have decided like that's what my identity is. I am shy. So yeah, and that's just a small portion of it, but like yeah, even when you go up to like what you call yourself, I had to realize that like the people who are going to be attracted to me and who are going to be like magnetized to me, it will be because of my message. So what I say, how I live, how I show up, not like what my title is. So yes, that's going to evolve like as I become more and more clear, which can only happen through action. However, like it doesn't mean like, and I know like one of the thoughts that you hear or fears you might hear yourself is, or stories you might tell yourself is, they're going to think that I like don't, like I'm indecisive, that I can't figure it out, that I don't know what's going on. And it's like, no, actually, I know exactly what's going on. Like, that's why I have the courage to like get more and more clear about, what it is I'm doing. I think honestly, before when I was working and like going after these jobs that I actually weren't going to make me happy and didn't fulfill me is when I was indecisive, and when I was unclear, and when I was all over the place. And my job title didn't change. It stayed the same for like a decade, no matter where I went. But, in this year of me starting a business and starting like a profitable business and maintaining that and one that is fulfilling and feels authentic to me, I've changed my title. I don't know how many times, a few times, but no, no, it's working out.
Yeah, and your title, the title, I play with this all the time, like on my Instagram bio. I'm like, what do I call myself today? And the funny thing is the title has no effect on my ability to help and my ability to work with people, right? And that's where it's like people want the mental identity, and yet we know when you're operating from that, soul level of serving and helping people, it doesn't matter what you call yourself. It's your ability to do what you do.
Exactly. And that's a self discovery process. And so you are inevitably going to discover more and more of yourself. And like one of my like affirmations that I say in the morning is that I guide souls who are willing to surrender to a truer way of being. And so like I have to be willing to do that myself, right? And so as I discover more, I have to be willing to like surrender to that and not hold on to, oh, but I say that I'm a career coach. Like this title means way more than like my truth. No.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And what you said a little bit earlier through this was, your actions and your way of being and how you show up, that's what's
Mm-hmm.
important. And
Yes.
the way you show up is based on your identity, right? Your identity determines the actions you take. So by you embracing your evolving identity, it also shifts how you show up.
Yes. You show up as your higher self, like more and more and more. Exactly.
And can I just reflect back to you? Now, we'll talk about this in a minute, folks, because she's not on social anymore. But when I'm following her and when I witness Janice, when I witness you on social, you to me, you're first of all, I'm so drawn to your energy because it is so grounded, but also so abundant. Like to me, you just like radiate abundance.
Thank you.
And I am so attracted to that energy. I'm like, oh,
I
this is
want more
someone
of that.
yeah, I want to be a
Yeah.
part of that.
Thank you. I really appreciate you saying that. I say that I appreciate that because that's one of the, I guess, values that I really like cling to as, something to remember, something to keep in mind. Like I think whenever you part of like the process of receiving guidance from your intuition is letting go. And I think the more and more that I let go of whatever it is or attachment to whatever anything, the more that I'm able to like believe in abundance, that there is enough there. I have a quote that I posted on social media at the very beginning of the year, and it said something like, I said like abundance is like living your truth with a level of freedom that can only come from self-love.
Ooh,
And yeah, I don't even know. I literally, Dan, I swear I was like sitting down. I don't remember if I was journaling. I don't know why, how that came to me, but that was my reaction. What you just did was my reaction. And I was like, I have to share this with everyone on social media. And so I posted that and I said, more abundance this year. So like that honestly has been my intention. So I really, um, grateful to hear that that's how it's been received.
yeah. And I love just, we are people mirror what they receive of us. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just my sense. And it's so funny. I was just peeking while you're talking at your um, I had asked you a question that said if you could magically get people to understand one thing, what would it be? And here's what you
Mm-hmm.
wrote, which is so
Oh
tied to what we're
God.
talking about. You said, and guys, she filled this out a long time ago because we thought we
Yeah.
would do this forever ago, but now the conversation as it has flowed this way. She wrote, I would want people to know that they don't lack the intelligence or courage or ability
Mm.
to live abundantly. You just haven't discovered the fullness of who you are yet. It's there, and it's just a few mindset shifts away.
Yes. Yes.
Look at this wise woman dropping knowledge and wisdom on us.
And you know why I say that like abundance is there and it's just a few mindset shifts away? Like I say like when it comes to abundance, it's like pretty much two things: permission, and then allowing yourself to see possibilities. So abundance really is just about allowing yourself to do something or receive something. So it's like giving yourself permission to say that thing that you are scared of saying, or giving yourself permission to admit that truth that feels really uncomfortable, or giving yourself permission to like, whatever it is. It's like giving yourself permission to receive. That's really, really what it is. And then also like seeing the possibility that's out there and the opportunities that are out there and available to you once you give yourself permission.
Yeah. And so then because I would say people often think of abundance purely monetarily.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're talking, do you see that it builds into all areas of your life? Like, yeah, if you're not feeling abundant in one area, does it kind of spider web out?
Oh my gosh, yes. Like and that's why like I almost kind of like hesitated when I did decide to call myself a business coach or even a career coach. Like I always knew that it was not about, the resume or like the website or whatever. It starts with you like as an individual, and like whether or not you give yourself permission on the like small things or the little things. Like you are not going to believe that you can be like this amazing leader and this amazing business owner if you like won't even, if you don't, like if you won't like say, you know, I want to quit my job. Like if you won't give yourself permission for that small thing because you're afraid of like judgment and whatever, you're not going to give yourself permission for the bigger thing or the larger thing. And so there's so much that we have been taught and that we have been conditioned to believe and invest in around scarcity. It really does take an unlearning for you to start giving yourself that permission and start being able to see possibility where before you just like did not see it at all. One, I think there's an illustration too that I think I also shared, but I would love to share here too. I was listening to a guided meditation, and she was talking us through a breathing exercise, and she said, breathe in, breathe out. And she said, like, when you let go of that breath, like, think about how easy it was to let that breath go because you know another one is coming right after it. And I was like, oh my gosh, because it's also true too. She was like, and it was effortless. You just breathing in and out is effortless. You know another breath is coming, so it's not a big deal. You're not trying to like hold it and control it. And it's like, yeah, if you try to like hold and control your breath, like you can't breathe. But when you let it go effortlessly, that wasn't correct, but it's fine. Another one comes in. And so I was like, oh, what is it that we're trying to control so hard, so much that we're actually blocking abundance in our lives? And so we stop ourselves from doing certain things because we want to control someone else's reaction. We want to know exactly how much money we're going to make. We want to make sure that all of our friends still like us and that we have the same group 10 years from now. Like, what are we trying to control and predict in our lives? And how is that like keeping us from being able to live and work abundantly? So, yeah.
I felt myself allowing a deeper breath as you were saying all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because when it comes to the controlling, right?
Mm-hmm.
We 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 kind of let our desire to control. In fact, I was doing these interviews the other day with some people who are to get some messaging insights for my own business.
Mm-hmm.
And control came up a lot. And I asked this one woman, I said, so you keep talking about control. Now, if you could control everything,
Yeah.
would you be happy?
Yeah.
And she said, no, I have never met someone who says, I control everything in my life and I'm perfectly calm and happy about it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. No one. No, you're just, all it brings is anxiety because you're constantly worried about like, and that's the other thing about like having complete control and not being willing to surrender and not being able to let go. Is when you're completely responsible for every single thing that happens. So that's why you have people who are exhausted and tired and overworked. Yes, because like you are completely and totally and solely responsible, or you feel that way is what you tell yourself for every single thing that happens to you.
Yeah, and we can actually control very little in life.
Very little. And so it's just like it only brings anxiety. So it feels, well, I think actually it logically like makes us feel better because we feel like, oh, I have it all under control, but that's not ever actually the truth.
Right. Yeah. So for you, how are you, because I kind of want to transition here a little bit because
Mm-hmm.
I'm super excited to talk about this, is we've talked about Instagram and, how we met and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
You're not doing that right now. So I want to know a little bit about how and where you're showing up and what brought you to this place of not showing up on social media.
Yeah. So I would say, I started and like officially launched my business on social media in September of last year. So almost exactly a year ago. And, it was really, again, just me following breadcrumbs and me just saying like, oh, I'm just going to do whatever works for me and I'll see what happens. I was transitioning from doing the blog that I told you about that I started. And so like, I just noticed like my posts were like so long. And then you probably know this if you see my posts, like they're pretty extensive. I have a lot to say.
Yeah.
And so that was my first hint where I was like, okay, like Instagram is telling me like, reel it in some. This is the character limit. I think it's like 3,000. I don't know. It might be something similar to that. But anyway, so that was the first instance. The one thing that I did take from working at a software company is like, if it's really difficult to like do something, there's an easier way to do it. And it probably the way that you're doing it, like the tool that you're using to do it, like it's not the way to do it. And I'll give you another example. Like I am on stories. I was on Instagram stories a lot. And, I'd want to caption things because I wanted to highlight certain things. And like, I, wanted to be respectful of anyone who maybe like couldn't have volume up or, whatever. And I was like, oh, it's so much work. And like, sometimes the stories would delete themselves and whatever. And then I would like, an hour later from like, what turned out to be like a 15 or 20 minute, story spiel. I was like, yeah, because that was an IGTV, Janice. That's why it took so long for you. So just, I realized from a lot of how I was trying to communicate that Instagram probably wasn't the best medium for it. I guess medium is the phrase I'll use. So there was that. And then around the time like when I think George Floyd was murdered and there was like all of this stuff on Instagram, I started feeling my energy shift. And I'm very much someone who is like, I get to decide my energy. It's harder and harder to do that. Like I don't watch local news for the most part. Like I still stay informed in other ways because I have the internet and I'm a millennial. And I don't like consume certain things. However, it was really, really hard during that period to kind of like make sure that I didn't watch any videos that were like overly violent or, kind of like be really like affected by like some people were feeling rightfully angry, just whatever. Like there's just so much going on. And I just was like, oh, this energy, I couldn't really use Instagram during that time because I just was like, I have to decide my energy and this is not the energy that I want.
Yeah, it's like riding everyone else's emotional waves.
Exactly. I couldn't do that. I mean, I could have, but I didn't want to. Like, I know that I could be intentional and mindful about that. And so staying off Instagram was my, I guess, kind of solution to that. And then so around June, I just remember like talking to someone and I kind of shared that on my stories, I believe. It's like, hey, just FYI to anyone out there, like there's no right or wrong way to respond to this. You get to decide your energy. Like it's really important for you to honor like what your intentions are and just keep in mind that like you don't have to be a certain way and that like just you decide your energy. So someone like responded to that. She's a fellow business owner that I've also met on Instagram. So I will miss Instagram for that reason, I will say. She said, oh, I'm feeling the same way. And I'm trying really not to like take on anyone's energy. And that's really been helping me stay sane. And I said like, yeah, it's really heavy. And I just like really, my well-being is really important to me. And I know that like in order for my business to be well, I have to be well too. And I have to take care of myself. And I just was like, and actually I've been really feeling that I don't want to be on Instagram as much anymore. And I said, the only thing is, I just don't know like where I'm going to connect with my clients. And I said, yeah, I've been feeling the same thing. And so we're like, well, she was like, well, if you do get off of Instagram, let me know how to connect with you. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, I'll let you know. But basically, like, yeah, I want to find a way to focus more on my clients. So this very long story. After I promoted my very last offering on Instagram, I was like, okay, I think this is like a good cutoff point for me to like really get off of this platform if I'm really going to do that and honor what I feel. Because I could have like continued and just been like, no, like where else am I going to find clients? What am I going to do? Blah, blah, blah. Um, but I decided that I'm going to connect via email instead. Like that's going to be the medium in which I use because writing is something that's it just really comes naturally to me. And I have really valued Instagram because of the conversations and the connections that I've been able to build through that platform. And I can still see that being possible and maybe even more possible without the distraction of like whatever else is going on there. With me sending, a simple email to someone about something that I'm thinking about or talking about, just like I would on Instagram. And then just, saying, hey, like hit reply back if this resonates. Like I want to chat about it. Not even like I want you to be a client, but like I really just want to have conversations because as you can see, I like to talk.
Yeah. Well, honestly, you have a lot of beautiful things to say. So I'm loving this.
Thank you. So yeah, that's what I've decided. And there are other factors in play too. Like there are so many, like there are people saying stuff about like Facebook and like stop hate for profit and like that kind of stuff. And I kind of shared too, like in July when I did these sessions around June and July when I did sessions around anti-racism, I tried to like run a Facebook ad and like it was denied and blocked basically. And I just realized, so I'm not necessarily saying like I am going to be 100% social media free because I actually really do enjoy TikTok. I think it's kind of fun. So I can experiment in ways with that. However, like as far as Facebook, I'm not going to be like on Facebook or Instagram, use any of those products to like promote to potential customers or communicate with, current clients. Um, and yeah, any other social media that I'm using, I honestly will just be using it for like, it's just fun and I'm experimenting, not like this is my, marketing strategy. Um, I just feel like as far as like the newsletter that I'm launching, like this will be such a more aligned way for me to connect with potential clients, kind of like welcoming in my community, having them, hear my thoughts and ideas, seeing if that resonates with them, and going from there. And this is kind of like when I quit my job and my client, like I got my first client. Once I like changed my social media handle on Instagram and went back to that just being personal, I booked a client and she was like my second client ever who like paid in full. And like I had like I think this is my highest day ever in my business. And so it was again confirmation, like stop being afraid to let go of, what's not working, what's not aligned. I don't want to say it wasn't working, but what's not aligned. Because again, we believe in abundance over here. Like there is more available, especially when you follow your joy and you follow your truth and you follow your purpose. Like, how can more not be available to you? So, yeah, I know that was really long.
No, I love it. Just the whole journey, because exactly that is what you just shared is, look, this is because everyone's like, how do I get off Instagram, right? But it's not a matter of how, it's a matter of if and when, based on what you're feeling is in alignment with you. And because we're not into over identifying, just because you're off in this moment, it doesn't mean forever
Yeah, it could
Janice is
evolve.
no longer,
Yeah.
but it could, right? It's like, it's whatever is because you're following that guidance that is so much deeper than like what anyone can tell you.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's so many people who can look on the outside again and say, "Oh, that's a horrible business strategy," like whatever. I don't care because I first of all, it's affirmed to me that it's not because I'm still working with clients. But then also again, like your intuition will always be more powerful and more accurate and more correct than any other advice or strategy that you can find out there. It will always be better. Always.
I think we've got our first, well, not our first, I've written down like 11, but our the most magical quote ever.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. And that's the thing, like trying to like I call it like trying to find the cheat codes. Like people are trying to find the cheat codes to success. And it's like actually it's like literally all inside of you. All of it. It's a matter of getting clear on that because we've, there's so much conditioning and messaging that we've received that kind of covers that up and like prevents us from actually really connecting to it. But it's all there.
So along that lines, in fact, this question came up earlier and then I forgot it and then it just came back as you said that is, what do you feel, especially in the work that you're doing, what do you feel is the biggest lie and falsehood that we've been led to believe?
Oh my gosh. There are so many. I don't.
I know. Give me your favorites.
Oh, this is the hardest question ever. Okay. Honestly, and I know this might seem like a cop out to some people, but I promise it's not. But like anything, when someone says like you have to blah blah blah, or like whatever, I don't know, whether it's like or there's no way to or whatever, like it's just wrong. Because what I found is like people can share like what's worked for them. And sure, like you may be able to build a business that creates like some kind of success from it, but it may not be your brand of success, number one. And so you might like end up building a business that's not even one that you love or even like or want to continue. And it's just not sustainable for you. And so like they figured out what's worked for them and that's what they're sharing. So is it their brand of success that you want to create for yourself for yourself, or is it your brand of success that you want to create for yourself? And so I think letting go any hard and fast like rule that you've heard, I would say it's wrong. Like I try not to make blanket statements. So, but I mean, I think any hard and fast rule that you hear is just like it may not be true for you, or it may be true for you. But it's like really, really important for you to do the work of like seeing if that does align with your truth, because we weren't all put here to do the same things in the same way. Like everyone isn't meant to be, marketing their business on Instagram. Everyone isn't meant to like follow a set path and like retire, at 30 years from the same job. Some people are, but like maybe you aren't. And so it's really like, I feel like imperative to like do the work to discover if that is your truth or not, or if that's your path.
Yeah, and it's so funny you say that too. It's like, yeah, we have to filter everything through our inner guidance system, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was listening to someone, Just Lively, who's deep into this inner voice work, who I'm trained in. And I remember at one point she was saying, you know, I didn't feel aligned to do my taxes, but like that's one of those things that you're told you have to do. You have to do. She said, but I decided to play an experiment and not do them until it felt aligned.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, and you know what? The fee for not doing them on time was like $30. She's like, it was something so insignificant that I created such a huge story around.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And honestly, yeah, that's true. And it's like, Yeah. And so stuff like that, like people would be like, oh my God, I mean, you have to do your taxes. I mean, obviously it has to get done. However, like her acknowledging that is like maybe, when she did finally do it, it was like she was in a much better space mentally or more clear or whatever. Or maybe like you listening to your intuition saying that like you get to meet some like amazing math powerhouse who, because I'm not good at math, I am not good at math. Maybe you meet your next good friend or whatever. So like I think our intuition doesn't necessarily just show up for us in ways that we can understand and that we can predict and control. We go back to that. Sometimes it's like several reasons why you're intuitively guided to do something. Sometimes it's one specific reason, but yeah, like you never know. And so I love that she was like, I'm just going to trust that. Like, obviously, like, I'm not going to like put myself in jeopardy or danger. However, like, what's the worst that can happen? That's a good question to ask yourself when you have like intuitive guidance. What's the worst that can happen? And like actually find out what the worst is and then be like, is that, am I okay with that? Like, will I actually just go ahead and listen to my intuition? Because what's the worst that can happen?
And realistically, right? Because I think what we operate so often from this feeling, like this unspoken
Yeah.
concept idea of which is usually like, I'm going to be homeless and living on the street. Like that's where the brain goes. But if you actually were to track it back, like I've done this with clients before, I'm like, okay, but let's be really, really real. Like worst case scenario, like could you end up living with your parents or a sibling or a friend? Like if we really are really specific about that and get the fear on paper, right?
Yes, Dana. That's why I love that you said unspoken. Like it's an unspoken fear. Like when we don't like Brene Brown, she says this about shame, but basically that like shining a light on it is like the way to like pretty much get rid of it. Like just saying it out loud, telling someone whatever. It's the same with fear for yourself. Like even if you don't tell someone else, like just say it out loud, write it in your journal, whatever. It will seem so much more like, I don't want to say ridiculous because,
Insignificant.
Once it's out there in the air and you can really start to say like, okay, so what's the, like you said, what's actually the thing here? And I actually do want to make this distinction. I don't like, because this was like one of the last things I talked about on Instagram actually, is I actually don't like think fear is bad. And I feel like fear does get a bit of a bad rap. So it's not necessarily your fear that's like telling you those things. It's the story that you've made up in response to your fears. So again, it's like your mindset filtering, what your intuition is communicating to you. Because like, I think fear actually communicates so much more than like, stop or don't do that or what's wrong with you. Like it's actually a whole lot of other stuff. And it's actually our mindset, the way that we've translated that emotion or feeling that's like us telling ourselves to stop.
Yeah, I was listening to, I think it was Jim Fortin the other day, and he was saying fear, we often associate fear and danger as the same thing. But we can be in danger without having to create the story of fear. Because in fact, if you're in danger, the best place to take action from is not fear.
Yeah.
Right. And fear can be like it's like saying anxiety, right? Like it's this blanket term, but it's like, well, what are you afraid of will happen? What is the worst case scenario? What are you afraid will be revealed? What we're afraid of is you're not just in fear, but you're afraid of some sort of outcome. And then it's the story about what the outcome means that you're really afraid of.
Exactly. It's the meaning that we're assigned. I feel like a lot of times fear is actually telling us to move forward. And so it is hard to distinguish, like for our brain anyway, it's hard for our brain to distinguish between this is dangerous, like you are going to die. And like this is just, this is something else. And I think usually the something else is actually telling us to move forward, like, hey, this is new and it's really important to you, or you really want to get this right, or I know this is really overwhelming, but it's because you're super excited about this. And so like, it's actually saying what you need to do is move forward so that you can like, know what the outcome is. So it's like actually pushing you to decide or to act.
And the fear, right? It's so good because the fear usually comes after the intuitive knowing.
Yes, exactly. Because of that intuition is communicating it to you. So it's that desire, right? It's the base of that desire and knowing, and it's being communicated to you. And so yeah, the fear isn't like, it's not because of that or like after that or whatever. It's or it is after that, but it's because of your interpretation of that knowing. So it's not your knowing that's the problem or the thing that's the problem. It's your response to what you felt.
Zinger. That's so beautiful. Is there anything else that you just wish people knew or want to share? Obviously, I'll get how they can get in contact with you and get on your newsletter. But is there anything other wisdom, Janice wisdom, that you want to impart on everyone before I let you go, or anything that you want to cover?
Yes, I guess that would be just one last thing I would say. And that's because I just feel like this is, I don't know, it's really important. And that is like knowing what your distractions are. Because a lot of times, what keeps us like off track when it comes to what our truth is and what our own unique path is that we are so distracted by so many other things. And sometimes those distractions can be external, sometimes they could be internal. But again, a lot of times we give ourselves stories about why, they're necessary or why they're actually good for us or whatever. And so I think if you can get really clear on what is distracting you from your purpose and taking you away from your calling and your path, then that's a really big game changer. So yeah, that's what I'll end on.
I love that. And well, that's such a good topic because, for example, it could be something simple. Like for me, I recently deleted my email app from my phone. I have like 5 email accounts, and I get almost no important email. Let me be really clear. I was constantly checking my email. I'm like, what am I doing? So now I deleted it and I'm like, wow, it's freed up so much time. So it can be something really like that, or social media. Or it might be, something like I have to fold the laundry, or I have to respond every time my kid says something, or answer every phone call.
I think that, yes, I love what you said about like I have to respond every time my kids say something, because I think a lot of times it's those like internal distractions or like habits or patterns that we don't notice are like, kind of keeping us from the clarity that we need. So I'll just say for myself, like I realized that I would like connect with people who were like difficult to connect with. Like I would try my like best to be like, oh, like they're shy or they're whatever or they're this. And so like it was my new project to work on, right? And so I was like, oh, I have to stop trying to connect with people who are withholding, like whether that's like withholding, information, withholding affection, withholding whatever it is, because then I'm like, oh, well, it like drew me in even more for me to be like, this is my project. And I didn't realize, oh, this is me distracting myself from doing my work by trying to like help them do their work. And that was a huge distraction for me. Once I stopped indulging in those kinds of relationships and exchanges, I had so much more mental space and like room in my life. Whereas almost like I don't even like, man, what do I do with this? Like I have to actually sit quiet and like be aware of myself and be mindful of myself because I don't have like, all of these human projects around. And that could be friends, family members,
Wow.
draining clients, whoever. But yeah.
And it's just like an invitation. I mean, it's definitely got me thinking too, but it's just an invitation of, we have to be really honest with ourselves about what's going on.
Yes. That's another thing. Like really getting clear on your distractions helps you do. It's like it's a practice in honesty with yourself. Like how honest can I be with myself? And then another thing that gives you opportunity to practice is self-compassion and curiosity. Because a lot of times I say this with clients, like you're not willing to be honest with yourself because you're going to be met with judgment and you're going to be met with like condemnation from yourself. And so you're not going to be honest and say, yeah, like this is definitely a distraction. So when you are honest with yourself, be kind. Ask yourself, like, why are you doing this? Like, get more curious about that so that you can start to do the work to like kind of, untangle that. So yeah, so many good opportunities for like when you try to like figure out what is your distraction.
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like we could talk and talk and talk. This is so much fun. I so appreciate everything that you shared. I mean, we got to cover a lot of different topics, and I just think it's so helpful, for everyone to hear. And obviously that includes me, like just how, you take this work that you do and you don't just coach and you don't just help people, but you're living it and you're embodying it and you're following your own inner guidance and you're being the compassionate and curious witness to your own evolution. And it's just so beautiful to witness.
Thank you, Dana. I'm so appreciative of that. And I have to say the same is true for you. Like, I know I'm not on social media now, but what I've seen you share, like around emotional processing and like getting in touch with your inner voice and like really allowing that to guide you, like it's so practical and useful. So I really appreciate that you share that with your audience as well. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just love how our alignment of our messaging. And then for that, I mean, you teased us with this awesome newsletter. How can we sign up so that we can actually hear from you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, it's worksoulflow.com/join. And you join the community. The newsletter is going to be called Channel Your Truth.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've that came to me and I was like, yes. So I'm really excited to share with you more on a weekly basis, just the thoughts that are in my mind and like ways that you can really like channel your truth in a more consistent way, in little ways and big ways. So definitely join in if you would love to be a part of that community.
Excellent. And we'll put the link in the show notes so that they have access to that. And that's the best way to be in touch with you right now? Yeah?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Janice. Thank you for your time, your energy, your abundant energy that I just love, and all of the insights.
You are so welcome. And I thank you so much. So much. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you for joining me on another episode of the Tuning In podcast. As always, if this would resonate with anyone you know, please share the episode. You can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans, or find me on my website at alignful.com.